buckle your seatbelts, because today, what we're talking about is both sobering and super encouraging, because God's desire for you is based on your intimate relationship with Him. Today's podcast is going to be super encouraging for you. I'm so glad you're with us for part 2. It's a joy to have my dear friend Michael Dow in studio again with us. Thank you, bro. Neither of us changed our shirts from last week, but hopefully nobody will notice that. Nobody.
I'm all in.
Listen, last week we dove into Leviticus 6, 7, 8, the whole issue of sacrifices. And something interesting happens when sacrifices were offered. The result of following what God says is God's glory is manifested. That needs to be the thing we desire more than any other thing. The whole earth is going to be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord, like the water covered the seas. Glory is a huge topic. But sometimes when people see God being glorified, and this is what's crazy, they try to replicate it. And the worst thing that you can do is to see God's glory come and then in your own power, try to make that same thing happen again. And I'm telling you, bro, it is a temptation. It isn't. We've been around revival circles, and I'll just tell you this really quickly. I was blessed to be part of the Brownsville revival in the late 1990s. Is that right? It seems like so long ago. Late 1990s. And the church was experiencing a divine move of God. And I remember visiting another church, and they made their sanctuary almost identical to the Brownsville sanctuary. They got the same banners everywhere.
Oh, wow.
Their ushers had blue sport coats on with gold name tags, just like Brownsville. They had people that they called catchers in case people fell with red armbands. I mean, all these, they replicated Brownsville. And when I said, why? What is all this? Why are you doing this? And they just said, we are wanting to be prepared for when God shows up, without really understanding what happened before God showed up in preparation for God showing up. Bro, that's dangerous, because in Leviticus 9, Aaron did exactly what God told him to do.
Yes.
God came down, consumed the sacrifice, and the glory of the Lord fell. In Leviticus 10, Aaron's sons do exactly what their father did in Leviticus 9. And in Leviticus 10, God responds entirely differently. Leviticus 9, the glory of God comes down, consumes the sacrifices. Leviticus 10, the fire comes down and consumes the sons. And this is amazing. So I want to dive into this with you. And it's like, even as I'm saying it, there's like this trepidation inside of me that we have to be so careful. I want you to speak into this. We have to be so careful. Number one, what is the motivation of our hearts for doing what we're doing? And number two, really, I'm thinking to myself, who cares what people think when they look at what we're doing, as long as we are following the Lord?
Yeah, I think like you mentioned, they do what they saw others do, and the result or the consequence of that is not the same. It is dangerous at times to try to mirror or to copy and paste someone else's intimate obedience to the Lord onto your own life, right? Exodus, Moses obeys the Lord. They go through the waters. Pharaoh and his army seems to try to do exactly what Moses and the children of Israel do, and they get drowned in the same act. To me, it's like Acts 19. Jesus, we know, Paul we know. But that's in response to, in the name of Jesus, whom Paul preaches.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We'll just try to do what we've seen Paul do, expecting to get the same result and or consequence.
Yeah.
The joy of following the Lord is not in just simply being able to keep particular details from a distance in order to acquire blessing or results, but it's to really intimately give ourselves to him and to come under his influence, where we individually, intimately are connected to the Lord for ourselves, and not just certain interests or actions where we perceive God's going to be willing to bless us or do something in certain ways. Right? The Lord wants people that will be his. Come to me, know me, walk with me, take my yoke on you. But the desire to be disconnected from God and yet still secure a particular blessing is very real. And so at times we're evaluating other people's lives, trying to see, well, what's the secret sauce? What's the right action? What's the right this, the right that? And it's dangerous at times.
Yeah. In Leviticus 10, it's actually called strange fire. Strange fire. Let's just open the scriptures up. And friends, I want to encourage you. What we do outwardly and how people perceive us is not nearly as important as to our inward heart and how God perceives us, because we can be getting the praise of man all day long and even be getting results and still miss God. You know what I'm thinking right now? Moses was told by the Lord to strike a rock so that the children of Israel's thirst could be quenched. Later on in the wilderness wanderings, Moses is called to speak to the rock. And you know what Moses did? He struck the rock. Here's the crazy thing, bro. The same thing happened. He disobediently did what worked before, still got the results, but God was not pleased. And it cost Moses his destiny of entering into the promised land with the children of Israel. God says, you're not going to enter in. Because he did something that worked in the past, and it actually worked in the current day. But God said, you misrepresented me to the people, so you will pay the consequences. Now, here's the cool thing. God was concerned about the thirst of the Israelites, and he quenched that. Signs, wonders, miracles are not the sign of God's approval and blessing on our work. It's the sign of his love for those who need to be healed and their thirst quenched. And that's the scary thing. Especially, dude, we've given our lives to the Lord in all that we do. It's more important to have the intimacy with God with no signs and wonders than it is to have signs and wonders with no intimacy with God, because the signs and wonders will happen. Many are going to come on that day, the Lord says, and says, Lord, I've healed the sick in your name. I've cast out demons in your name. And he says, depart from me. I never knew you. So here in Leviticus 10, it looks like Nadab and Abihu are looking for the same glory to come down on their watch, if I can just put it in my own human terms. Okay, so let's read this together. Leviticus 10, verse 1. Now Nadab and Abihu, the sons of Aaron, took their respective fire pans, and after putting fire in them, placed incense on it and offered strange fire before the Lord, which he had not commanded them. Fire came out from the presence of the Lord and consumed them, and they died before the Lord. Then Moses said to Aaron, it is what the Lord spoke, saying, by those who come near to me, I will be treated as holy, and before all the people, I will be honored. This is astounding, Michael. When we don't treat God as holy, there are results, even when we do all the other things. We set up our sanctuary just like the sanctuary where God is moving in revival.
For sure.
Do you know, you've written about fasting and prayer, but yes, I know you know because you and I had a conversation about it. You actually might be the one who told me that you can fast the wrong way. There's an appointed way of fasting. And in Isaiah, it says, look, is this not the fast which the Lord has chosen? And we can do outwardly holy things with no results. Jesus says, when you pray, don't pray like this. When you fast, don't fast like this. Praying and fasting, many would go, man, you're on a 40-day fast. What if you're doing it for the wrong reasons? Maybe we can unpack this a little bit. This is unrehearsed, but what are you seeing here, dude? These guys lost their lives.
Yeah. So like you said, in relationship to fasting, just to comment on that and then keep it going, you can miss meals and also miss Jesus. Missing meals doesn't guarantee attentiveness or the turning over of your affection to the Lord in an intentional way, in an intimate way. And that's what I see here is the personal intimacy with God is the ultimate issue. Come on. It's not just the stuff, right? You mentioned Matthew 7. Many will say, we had all the stuff going on, outward appearance, these people would have been validated by the seeming results of their lives. And the Lord will say, I never knew you. We were never intimate. You had a lot going on, but we had nothing going on together. Yeah. There was no union. There was no joy-filled, intimate fellowship, right? So here, it makes me think of John the Baptist, right? And what they say to him in John 3. The story is actually super comical if you put it in these terms. For those who understand like real life and the human condition, and especially relating that to ministry culture, they come to John and they say, hey man, like your ministry is shrinking. The guy up the river, this Jesus guy, all the people are going to him, right? His ministry is growing. Yours seems to be dwindling. We've been walking with you. We've had a good thing going on. We've been trying to build this brand, but the meetings are now shrinking. Do something about it. Right? And that's really the challenge for all of us. Yeah. Do something about it. Do something about your lack of results. Do something to create success based off of people's terms. Do something in order to make way for the applause of the crowd or the validation of a particular people or their perspective. We all have to battle that in unique ways over the rest of our life. We're never going to graduate from the place of the tension, do something about it. There's going to be different seasons, different testing opportunities, and John is faced with one. They're like, do something about this. And here we have the epic or the iconic statement. A man can only receive what's given him from heaven. He's talking about intimate obedience. When I do what God says, God's blessing will rest upon my works. Loving obedience to the Lord matters more than every other thing that could be done to perceive success or results, right? You can generate results, but he says a man can only receive what's given him from heaven. So fruit and results are not always the same. You can have a result-oriented life that's not fruitful at all in the consideration of God's perspective, because you're not intimately coming under his influence and obeying his commands. Obeying his commands individually is God's definition of success. Yeah. Did you do what I said? Yeah. Right? That's, we oftentimes quote John 8, he who the Son sets free is free indeed. Yeah. But when you back it up a couple of verses, there's a context there. He says, I know those that belong to me. It starts in like 31, 32. He says, I actually know those that belong to me. They're easy to identify. They do what I say. They know my voice. They obey my commands, and it leads them to a knowledge of the truth. And the experience of that truth actually produces freedom to them. And he who the Son sets free is free indeed. But freedom is connected to consistently coming under the harness of the truth, which is Jesus's commands. Yeah. Obeying his teaching, the intimate obedience. Are you willing to do what I say? Yeah. and not just scatter your life in a variety of ways to try to create results that you think everybody else is going to be impressed with and or is going to seem to define your life in a particular way, even if it's absent of what I really desire, which is that intimate fellowship where obedience should be birthed out of intimacy with God.
I've never thought of this in relationship to this, but think about this. The Israelites wanted a king, just like every other nation. Samuel anoints Saul and says, wait, I'm coming back in 7 days. You wait. Yes. But all of a sudden, these people are like, dude, you're the king. Yes. You are the king. And Samuel says, I've got to sacrifice. I've got to do something now so that I can validate myself in these guys' eyes that I'm the rightful king. And he sacrifices and actually doesn't wait for Samuel. And the Bible says as soon as he offered that sacrifice, Samuel shows up. And then the amazing verse, Samuel said to Saul, 1 Samuel 15:22, has the Lord as much delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice. Bro, I'm like really, I'm gripped because this sacrificial thing that Aaron's boys did in the eyes of many people, like in my flesh, if I was sitting there and I saw these boys doing it, maybe I would no, man, I should be the one doing that. I should be doing that because look how cool they appear. Ananias and Sapphira bringing their boatload of cash and dumping it at the feet of the disciples. I'm thinking to myself, man, I wish I was them. They end up breathing their last because intimacy and obedience with the Lord is far better than any outward sacrificial thing that we can do. I don't know what to say, dude, but it's like my heart is, it's literally how much of what we do is based out of an intimacy with the Lord without caring about what it looks like to other people. Let's just quickly jump to the Haftorah portion, because this week in the synagogues, not only are Jewish people reading Leviticus 9 and 10, they're also reading 2 Samuel chapter 6 and 7. And in 2 Samuel 6, I'll talk about this for a second, then I'll turn it over to you as we close. 2 Samuel 6, you've got Uzzah or Uzzah, however his name is pronounced. The ark of the Lord is moving, and that ark, the thing that demonstrates and represents the presence of God, which God said, no man touches that. No man touches that. The ark is wobbling on the cart. I'll just read this. 2 Samuel 6, verse 5. Meanwhile, David and all the house of Israel were celebrating before the Lord with all kinds of instruments made of fir wood, lyres, harps, tambourines, cymbals. Verse 6. But when they came to the threshing floor of Nacon, Uzzah reached out toward the ark of God and took hold of it, for the oxen nearly upset it. Outwardly valiant deed. They're protecting the ark from falling. Verse 7, and the anger of the Lord burned against Uzzah, and God struck him down there for his irreverence, and he died there by the ark of God. It seems like you've got Nadab and Abihu. You've got Uzzah. You've got Ananias and Sapphira. You've got Saul losing his kingship over doing something that outwardly seems sacrificial. But you know what? Strange fire always produces death. Strange fire, that word strange in Hebrew, and please don't be impressed with me, but I do have a Strong's Concordance. That word strange fire is the word sore, which means adulterous, like a strange woman, an adulterous woman. So without being crass, sex is not a bad thing. Unless you take it outside of the boundaries for which God created. It's supposed to be beautiful.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. But that same act outside of marriage is adulterous. It's fornication. It's sin. Same act. One is beautiful and pleasing to the Lord, and one is sinful. Same act. Nadab and Abihu. Same act. Ananias and Sapphira. People were throwing their coins down. They do the same thing, except their coins are like, woo.
Yeah.
But God sees something of the heart. So we've got a couple minutes, dude. I want you to close us out with anything that's on your heart. And if you don't mind coming back next week, I'll pay your airline ticket to come. Maybe we'll do one more podcast together. But we got to change our shirts. Okay. Tell me, dude. Just close us out. Take a couple minutes.
Well, I think the issue that you mentioned with Samuel and Saul says to Samuel, while you were away, the people were pressuring me. And I responded to their pressure. Right? I think this is the issue, right? Proverbs would say the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. So our intimate connection and dependence on God and his desires revealed to us is the beginning place of wisdom, right? So what's actually wise is to intimately give yourself to the Lord, to come under his influence and to do whatever he says. Yeah. That's real wisdom. Yeah. That's the definition of success. Obey my commands. Yeah. But we're all going to have times where we're challenged with the pressures externally that move us to do things that want to compromise the boundaries of what real wisdom is. Which is fearing God above all things, which is not being afraid, right? Like this carnal, fleshly, like fear, like God is angry or unjust, or he's going to punish me if I, seem to step out one way or no. Right. The fear of the Lord is God is holy, and he's not upheld on fleshly terms, right? Which is Uzzah reaching out. He's not upheld on fleshly terms, right? Presence isn't dictated by our own fleshly resources or means or what we want to kind of create the terms of God's being or abiding. It's the fear of the Lord. Man, God is holy. There's no one like him. He's exalted above every other. He is everything. And really like surrendering to that in intimate obedience is what produces the joy of what results or fruit in life is supposed to be about. So, looking at this, whether it's, Uzzah, whether it's, like we talked about last time, a strange fire, whether it's Saul and Samuel, whether it's John the Baptist, I think the point for me that's kind of undergirding or overarching, depending on the perspective, is, man, God desires intimacy where all of our activity, so to speak, is supposed to be born. But desiring activity that's kind of disconnected from intimacy is something that God is against, to put it in a simple way. But, for me, it should just create a jealousy regardless of the opinions or the pressures that move us or sway us at times. Really being anchored in an intimate fellowship with the Lord, and asking God for his grace to upend or to sever, these motivational attachments that at times move us to get results based off of people we're trying to impress or things that we desire for our own life and just don't really know how to get there because intimacy with God doesn't seem to be producing the things that we want. Really asking the Lord for grace to upend or sever all of these other motivations that would move us out of the fear of the Lord, which is the ultimate issue. The fear of the Lord to hem us in to intimate obedience. Because that's real wisdom. A man can only receive what's given him from heaven. You can get a lot of other things, right? But anything that God won't do, I'll do without. Really living with, a heart for the Lord in the midst of unique pressures that would want to compromise that is a challenge.
Amazing.
For all of us.
Yeah, it really is, bro.
I mean,
it really is.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, dude, for being here. It's super blessing to have you. And I really want to encourage you that God is more concerned about you being in relationship with him than what outwardly you're doing that may even bring results. Don't be numbed into thinking that your results are a sign of the blessing of God, but rather be softened into knowing that God is way more desirous to have a relationship with you than he is for you to do anything for him, because his love for you is not based on what you do for him. His love for you is based on his desire to have an intimate, personal relationship with you. Mike Dow, I love you so much, bro. Thanks so much for coming. Friends, if this podcast was a blessing to you, can I just encourage you to share it? Download our app, go to any app store, type in TFI. You can download our app. All of our podcasts are there, plus a bunch of other materials. And I want to let you know that we still have room on our November trip to Israel, November 1st through 10th. I'd love to have you there. For more information on that, go to togetherforisrael.org. I'll see you next week.